see you guys in the dark.
For the past 2 years, I have been working at a haunted house attraction. It's a really fun gig, but the job tends to attract some rather creepy individuals. For the 2 years that I have worked there have always been some kind of creep that works there. I'll start the story with orientation day. This is where we met all the other fellow actors and chose our roles. When I walked into the building, my heart fell to the pit of my stomach. A man who looked like the same creeper from my first year at the haunted house was waiting for orientation to start. But I knew that it wouldn't possibly be the same man, because the man from my first year had killed himself months ago. And to make matters even worse, this man even had the same name, Daniel. So I thought this was all a wild coincidence. There's no way this man will also turn out to be a creep. Boy, was I wrong. Allow me to describe Daniel. He was a man, probably in his late 40s or early 50s. He was a short and pudgy man. From the beginning, everyone would kind of tell that he was a little socially awkward. And there's nothing wrong with that. But he really did kind of creep out most of the workers. Additionally, he couldn't drive, so he was either super early to work or super late. And he was usually the last to leave. So overall, he was a peculiar fellow. But hey, we're all working at a peculiar job anyways. Orientation came and went without any issues, and soon the attraction started. To understand the story, let me explain where I was located in the attraction. I was located in a large maze outside of the main house with about 5 other guys, including Daniel. These 5 guys were scattered throughout the maze, and I was at the center of it in a large rectangular room. This room was enclosed, unlike the rest of the maze, and had 2 exits. All of the guys, besides Daniel, were around my age, which was around 18. Honestly, I don't even know whose brilliant idea it was to put a lone girl in a large maze with 5 dudes. Thankfully, I was somewhat friends with one of the guys, so I didn't feel too alone. However, this friend was located at the trail end of the maze. Daniel was located decently close to my room, but that didn't bother me at first. There was no reason for Daniel or any other guys to enter my room. They all had their own positions to handle. One other thing to understand about this maze is that all the actors were still able to see one another because the walls in the maze were relatively short. So despite being far away from my friend, I was still able to see him. Now I hope that explains everything clearly. Nothing strange occurred the first 2 nights, but on the 3rd night, Daniel made his move. When no customers were going through the attraction, the actors would just walk around the maze or sit on the ground to relax. During these times, I would leave my room and either sit on the ground somewhere or enter the main house to grab a water bottle. In order to enter the main house, I would have to go through the maze and pass Daniel's area. The first few times that I did this, Daniel said nothing and would just watch me. On the 3rd day, he finally mustered up the courage to say, "Hey, how are you?" Not thinking anything to it, I happily replied and carried on to fetch a water bottle. From then on, anytime I passed him, he always had some kind of comment. It was all harmless at first, like "You're really good, the weather's nice out here, you're a pretty scary actor." So other than him always having something to say, I really didn't think too much of it. Daniel continued on and kept getting a little braver. In between breaks, he would awkwardly walk towards the center of the maze. He moved really slowly, like he was trying to be stealthy. My only saving grace was that before he could reach my room, a group of customers would begin to approach, and he would have to run back to his position. This is when alarm bells began to ring. I knew there was no reason for Daniel to leave his position and come to mine. Now, whenever I saw that he was motioning towards my room, I would go out in the other direction in hopes to put more distance between us. It didn't help that he was dressed in a scary costume and wearing a mask. This only added to the tension. On the times where I chose to sit on the ground and wait for customers, Daniel would go through the maze and stand where a single wall separated us. Looking back, I should have just walked away, but I didn't want to come off as a rude, punk-ass teenager. This is when he introduced himself, even though we already did that on orientation day. Trying to play nice, I introduced myself and we shook hands. Then he said the words that I will never forget. "You're beautiful." This caught me off guard. That all I could say was, "I'm sorry?" He then repeated himself and kept his gaze locked on me. I very awkwardly replied, "Thanks," and refused to make eye contact with him. Keep in mind I'm an 18-year-old girl, and he is a man in his 40s, maybe his 50s. He's also covered in sweat, mud, and fake blood. Thoroughly creeped out, I was now determined to avoid him at all costs. Whenever we had breaks, I now went through the maze in the opposite direction of Daniel in order to get to the main house. It was a longer route, but it was definitely worth it. Daniel soon noticed this, and now put more of an effort in walking towards my room between breaks. There were several times where he actually entered the room, but thankfully I had the wits to leave the room entirely and go stand where my friend was. Daniel would just stand in my room, look around, and one time he sat down on the floor. It was actually comical sometimes to see him standing in my room, realize customers were coming, then rush out there and go back into his position. Sadly, with how dark the maze was, I couldn't always keep a sharp eye on Daniel's whereabouts. There was one incident where he approached me unexpectedly and said, "I like the way you scream." One of my lines that I said in the attraction to customers was, "You can't leave me. I need you." And Daniel just absolutely ate that up and loved it. Well, you can bet after he said that he liked that line, I stopped using it altogether. I had to endure a month of this, but over time, Daniel got the message that I was not interested. In retaliation, he began to steal my scare points. There were certain areas, scare points, near my room that I would pop out of and scare customers. These scare points were accessible to the other actors, but no one else used them but me. I suppose Daniel was mad that I wasn't giving him any attention, so he decided to steal my scare points as revenge. He also began to copy some of my lines. Thankfully, towards the end of the haunt season, the managers of the attraction moved me inside the main house. I'm not sure why, because I didn't say anything to them about Daniel, even though I know I should have. So for the final days working there, I was nowhere near him. When the season ended, I was relieved. However, the managers had the bright idea to open a Christmas-themed haunted house, and they asked me to work out. I loved the job and didn't plan on having a creep ruin it for me. Although many actors from the Halloween season didn't return for the Christmas attraction, Daniel was not one of them. He was there, and boy was he thrilled to see that I returned as well. This time, however, I convinced my best friend to work there with me. So with my best friend being there, she sort of acted as a deterrent for Daniel throughout the whole season. He never approached me. Well, that was until the final night, at least. My friend and I were chilling in one of the rooms and waiting on customers. This room was the first room in the attraction, so everyone else was passing through in order to get to their positions. Daniel began to pass through, then suddenly turned back around to face my friend and me. Again with those beady, never-blinking eyes, he said, "I think you two are beautiful." I just cringed and looked away, as my friend shyly replied, "Thank you." So overall, Daniel is pretty creepy, but I suspect that maybe he doesn't know what he is doing is wrong. I don't think he really realizes that flirting with young girls and trying to be in a room alone with them is not okay. I caught word that he might be autistic, but I don't know for sure. But the feeling of dread I had in that maze is a feeling I will never forget. In retrospect, I really should have told someone. I kept telling myself that if Daniel did one more thing, or tried to enter my room again, I would tell the managers. One thing that I can think of at least lightens the mood is that his costume was literally a tree man. His mask was just a tree with a contorted, scary face. When customers would walk by, they would all shout, "Look, it's Groot!" It got a good laugh out of me every time. If I explained the story poorly, I'm sorry. So Daniel, maybe you're just looking for love, but you're looking for it in all the wrong places, man. I'm assuming I will see you again this coming season, and if I do, please just stay away from me. This happened back in elementary school. I was around 7 or 8. I haven't thought about it too much in the past years, but reading through this made me think about this. However, at school, there was the annual Halloween party where brothers and sisters of my elementary school mates were invited. We've always had lots of fun, eat spooky snacks, things like that. I was wearing a vampire costume. I always wore vampire costumes at Halloween. And my best friend, Sarah, at the time, had a strange costume that involved some fake plastic chains, but seemed real because it was quite heavy. Here the story begins. Sarah tells me she had to go to the bathroom, so we both head there. I wait for her outside the entrance of the toilet. Another couple of girls go into the bathroom, but I don't pay attention to that. A few minutes go by, and I start getting very annoyed because I didn't want to lose the party. Another 5 minutes. I was pissed off. I turned around and entered in the bathroom. I hear the sound of her chains moving around, but I can't really tell from which bathroom it comes from. So I knock on every door. No response. I get to the ground, and I look through the spot between the door and the floor to understand where the noise is coming from, and I find it. Strangely, I see that she isn't alone in the bathroom. I raise my voice and ask if she's okay, and who was that girl. There was no reply. I start trying to open the door. We couldn't lock the door, so someone had to keep it closed somehow. I start panicking and screaming, and after I try with all the force a 7-year-old can muster, I manage to open it slightly. From now on, I have some confused memories, but I will try to explain myself the best that I can. I see a girl, and I knew her. She was the teenage sister of one of our classmates. I asked her what was happening, and she told me that Sarah was having some problems, and she was helping her. But I didn't hear Sarah anymore. I kicked her ankle and leg, and managed to get into the bathroom. I was scared as hell, and just wanted my friend back. As I get into the bathroom, she closes it again using her back to keep it closed. I look at Sarah, and she was sitting on the toilet with her face red and the chains on her neck. She was slowly choking. I began to scream, and that cunt slaps me. I was sobbing, crying, and basically I wasn't able to move because of the fear. All I could do was scream as loud as possible again. A teacher finally arrives and gets me and Sarah out of there. Calls our parents and the ambulance, and then my parents bring me home while Sarah goes to the hospital. Turns out that her brother, our classmate, was pissed off by her, and his sister decided to do something about it. She was a lot older than us at the time. I still get chills thinking about what has happened, but I've never seen cops talking to my parents or at school, so I guess she got away with it. Me and Sarah never talked about it ever again, and when I try to ask her what happened, she just doesn't want to talk about it. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night, and I'll see you next time.